Welcome in, everybody, to our deep dive. And today we're taking a close look at Émile-Jacques Ruhlmann, a real giant when it comes to the Art Deco movement.
Yeah, big name.
So we're going to explore his design language, how he approached elegance, what were the concepts and principles that kind of drove his creative process.
Absolutely.
You know, it's almost like we're offering a front row seat to this lecture about getting a new generation of designers to discover his style.
I like that.
And the cool thing is that as we chat, you'll actually be able to see some of his work.
Yes.
You know, the furniture, the patterns, and even some of his super stunning interiors are going to come to life visually. So
It's going to be very visually driven, this deep dive.
yeah,
It's fascinating how Ruhlmann's story really intertwines with the whole rise of Art Deco. I mean, he was born in Paris back in 1879, and you could say that design was kind of in his blood.
oh yeah,
You know, his father ran a very successful construction and interior design business.
really?
So Ruhlmann was exposed to that world from when he was very young.
So was he like practically destined to be a designer?
You could say that, but here's an interesting thing. His initial passion was actually painting.
Huh.
It wasn't until a bit later that he took over the family business and really began to make his mark on the world of design.
And he didn't just like take it over, he expanded the business, right?
Yeah.
He jumped into furniture design and then ultimately became this leading figure in the Art Deco movement.
Exactly. And his journey as a furniture designer is a great example of how designers evolve over time, because he started designing furniture around 1910, and first for his own apartment, believe it or not,
Wow.
before he ever showed his work publicly. And those early pieces, they had little hints of Art Nouveau and the arts and crafts movements. But later, he really found a lot of inspiration in Venetian designs.
I find it interesting that even though his early work had those arts and crafts influences, he actually disagreed with their core principles.
That is one of the things that makes Ruhlmann so intriguing, because he was so much his own person with a distinct vision. And while the arts and crafts movement championed things like simplicity and functionality, Ruhlmann truly believed that design trends were shaped by the tastes and the desires of the wealthy.
So he wasn't afraid to embrace luxury and exclusivity in his work then.
Absolutely not. And you see that in his choice of materials. I mean, Ruhlmann was known for using the most luxurious and exotic materials you can imagine. Ebony, rosewood, sharkskin, even ivory. I mean, these weren't materials you'd find in your everyday furniture.
Yeah, his work was in a completely different category.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just the materials. The craftsmanship was out of this world. I mean, each piece was so meticulously crafted with just this incredible level of detail.
Yeah.
Some pieces even took up to 8 months to complete.
8 months.
8 months.
I can't even imagine the patience and precision that must have required.
It really speaks to his belief in the inherent lasting value of his work. And, you know, it's fascinating. There are stories that his pieces often cost more to produce than what he even charged for them.
Wow.
It's almost as if he was subsidizing his client's desire for these exquisite objects.
So it wasn't just about making furniture, it was about creating these works of art.
Precisely. And to have complete control over his creations, he opened his own workshop in 1923 because he wanted to ensure that every little detail, every curve, every finish was exactly as he envisioned it.
It sounds like he was a bit of a perfectionist.
He was definitely meticulous, and that dedication to his craft, it earned him international recognition at the 1925 Paris International Exhibition of Modern Decorative and Industrial Arts, which is a huge event.
Yeah.
And it's the event that actually gave us the term Art Deco.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And his pavilion there, which was called the Hôtel du Collectionneur, House of the Collector, was a true spectacle. And he showcased his furniture in these really opulent, almost dreamlike settings.
It must have been quite a sight to behold.
Oh, it was. And it was a major turning point for him in his career, because not only did he get global recognition, he started attracting some very high-profile clients. I mean, we're talking figures like the Rothschild and Worms banking families, Eugene Schuler, who owned L'Oreal, even Gabriel Voisin, that innovative aircraft and automobile constructor.
That's quite a list.
It is.
It really shows the impact his work had on the cultural elite of the time.
Absolutely.
And speaking of impact, let's dive into some of his specific pieces, because I'm excited to see what we have in store visually.
Me too. And to start, if you look at the image on your screen, you'll see his iconic chariot chest from 1922.
Okay.
It's a prime example of what made Ruhlmann's work so captivating.
Wow, it is stunning.
Isn't it?
The way that he uses that contrasting Macassar ebony and amaranth wood is so striking, and the ivory inlay, it's so intricate. It's almost like a piece of jewelry, but it's functional chest.
It really showcases his mastery of combining different materials to create something that is both visually arresting but also serves a practical purpose.
Makes you wonder where he even found inspiration for something like that.
Well, he drew inspiration from all sorts of sources: nature, architecture, ancient art. And speaking of drawing inspiration, let's take a look at his Tibetan lady's desk, which is from 1923. And you can see that now. And this piece really embodies that sense of luxurious exoticism that Ruhlmann was so known for.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's breathtaking. It looks like it belongs in a palace. The detail, the materials, it's just exquisite.
It really is, and it's made with macassar, ebony, ivory, leather, even aluminum leaf and silk.
Wow.
Ruhlmann was not afraid to use a mix of materials that you wouldn't typically see together, but somehow it works beautifully.
It's like he had an intuitive understanding of how those different textures and materials could complement each other.
He definitely did, and this piece is a testament to the level of craftsmanship and artistry that went into his work. It wasn't just furniture, it was functional art.
Now, speaking of functionality, I am curious about something.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to get so caught up in the beauty and luxury of his designs. But did Ruhlmann actually prioritize the practicality of his pieces? I mean, were they actually comfortable to use, or was the focus solely on aesthetics?
That is a great question, and it's something that is often debated when discussing Ruhlmann, and it's true that some of his pieces might seem more like sculptures than everyday furniture.
Right.
But you have to remember, these were designed for a very specific clientele, a clientele that valued luxury and craftsmanship and exclusivity above all else.
Right.
And for them, the aesthetic experience was really paramount.
I suppose that makes sense. It's almost like owning a piece of art that you can also happen to use.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of pieces that kind of blur the line between art and furniture, let's move on to another iconic creation, his roll-top desk from 1926.
Ah, yes, the roll-top desk. What's really interesting about this one is that it's currently displayed at the Museum of Modern Art of the city of Paris.
That's right. And it's a testament to its enduring appeal.
It's almost like it's come full circle, you know?
Yeah.
Started as a piece of furniture,
Yeah.
and now it's considered this museum-worthy work of art.
Exactly. It speaks to the timelessness of Ruhlmann's designs. What stands out to you about this particular piece?
I really love the blend of that traditional form and the modern sensibilities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it has that classic roll-top design that feels very familiar.
Yeah.
But then you see the sleek lines, the luxurious materials, and it's distinctly Art Deco.
Absolutely. And when we talk about these iconic Art Deco pieces, we can't forget Ruhlmann's famous sunbed.
Ah, yes, the sunbed. If there's one piece that screams Art Deco, it's that one.
Yes.
The geometry, the elegant curves, the way it exudes both luxury and a sense of modernity, it's timeless.
It really captures the essence of the Art Deco movement, and what's remarkable is that Ruhlmann didn't just design furniture, he designed entire interiors.
Oh, wow.
Creating these cohesive, harmonious environments that were like stepping into a different world.
Do we have an example of one of his interiors?
We do.
I'd love to see how he brought his design philosophy to life in a larger space.
Take a look at the image on your screen. This is a great example of Ruhlmann's interior design work, and you can see how he uses those rich colors and luxurious fabrics, and of course his signature furniture pieces, to create a space that is both elegant and inviting.
It's like stepping back in time to a world of sophistication and glamour.
It is.
Every detail, from the lighting to the textures to the placement of the furniture, it's so carefully considered. It's clear that he had a vision for how each element would contribute to the overall experience of the space.
He wasn't just designing rooms, he was crafting experiences.
It makes you wonder how his style evolved over time, you know?
Yeah.
You mentioned that he gained international recognition at the 1925 Paris International Exhibition. Did that event change his approach in any way, and how did he adapt to that changing landscape of design in the years that followed?
That's a great question. You have to remember that while the 1925 exhibition was a defining moment for Ruhlmann, it also kind of marked the peak of the Art Deco movement. So how did he navigate that shift? Did he just ride the Art Deco wave as long as he could, or did he adapt as tastes changed and, new styles emerged?
Right, yeah. How did he manage that?
Well, that's where you really see Ruhlmann's adaptability and his ability to kind of stay relevant.
Okay.
Because he didn't just cling to a fading style. He was always evolving. Remember how we were talking about his early influences from Art Nouveau and arts and crafts and how he kind of moved beyond those?
Right.
Well, when the Great Depression hit and modernism began to kind of take hold, he made some really significant shifts in his approach.
So I'm curious, how did he change his style while staying true to his design principles?
Well, he started started incorporating more geometric elements into his work,
Okay.
and his designs became a little bit more streamlined and minimalist.
Interesting.
But it was still unmistakably Ruhlmann elegance.
Yeah.
Take, for example, the furniture he designed for the Manic Bag Palace of Maharaja Yashwant Rao Holkar II in 1932.
Oh, wow. So even during an economic downturn, he was still attracting those high-profile clients.
Absolutely. It's a real testament to his staying power as a designer because he knew how to adapt to the times without kind of compromising his core principles of quality craftsmanship and this refined aesthetic.
It makes you appreciate his business savvy as much as his artistic talent.
Right. He had a really good head for both. And speaking of his business, I know you've mentioned his workshop a couple of times.
Yeah.
What was it like working for Ruhlmann? Did he do everything himself, or did he have a team of designers and craftspeople to kind of help bring his visions to life?
I have a feeling he wasn't the type to just hand off a sketch and say, make this.
You are right about that.
Yeah.
Ruhlmann was very much at the helm of this design powerhouse. His studio employed around 25 architects and designers.
Wow, that's a big team. Was he a demanding boss?
Let's just say he had a very specific vision and incredibly high standard. He was always sketching, observing, refining his ideas.
Yeah.
But he also really understood the importance of collaboration and the value of each person's contribution to the creative process.
So how did a piece of furniture go from like a simple idea in his head to an actual finished product?
Yeah.
I mean, what was his design process like?
So picture this Ruhlmann gets inspired by something.
Okay.
Maybe a curve in nature or a pattern in a building or even just the way that light falls on a certain surface, and he would immediately jot it down in his sketchbook, almost like he was afraid of losing the thought.
And then what would he present the sketch to his team and say, all right, let's make this happen?
Not quite. He was much more hands-on than that.
Okay.
He was involved in every single stage of the process. So he'd start by creating this tiny drawing meticulously scaled at 1/1100th the size of the intended piece. And this wasn't about details. This was about capturing the essence of the design.
So like a miniature blueprint?
Exactly. And then once he was satisfied with that, he'd move on to another drawing, this time 110th the size. And now he could really start working out the proportions, the details, the relationship between different elements.
I can see why his pieces took so long to create. It was a very painstaking process from start to finish.
And then even after all of that, one final full-scale drawing would be produced.
Wow.
And that would serve as the guide for the craftspeople who would actually build the piece.
So his team of designers and craftspeople were essentially bringing his vision to life.
Yeah.
I mean, they had to be incredibly skilled to execute those intricate designs with such precision.
Absolutely. Ruhlmann relied on the expertise of these highly skilled artisans to translate his ideas into tangible objects, and it was a true collaboration, a real symphony of design and craftsmanship.
It's a good reminder that even the most visionary designers can't do it alone.
Very true, but it's also important to acknowledge that not everyone was a fan of Ruhlmann's work,
Right.
He had his critics, especially among the more avant-garde designers and architects of the time.
Yeah. I can imagine his style was so luxurious, so focused on craftsmanship. I'm sure that ruffled some feathers among those who championed a more functionalist approach to design.
Exactly. Designers like Le Corbusier, for example, they believed in a much more pared-down utilitarian aesthetic.
Right.
They saw Ruhlmann's work as being too ornate, too opulent,
Too much.
perhaps even too focused on appealing to the wealthy elite.
It's fascinating how different design philosophies can clash.
Yeah.
You have Ruhlmann, the master of elegance and refinement, and then you have the functionalists who prioritize practicality and accessibility above all else.
It was a real debate, and it reflects this tension that still exists in the design world today.
That's true.
Should design prioritize aesthetics or functionality?
Mm-hmm.
Can you achieve both without compromising one or the other?
Those are tough questions.
They are?
And it's interesting how Ruhlmann's work, even all these years later, still sparks these kinds of discussions.
He certainly left his mark, but even in the face of criticism, Ruhlmann stayed true to his own vision. And his success proves that there will always be a place for beauty, for craftsmanship, for those special pieces that transcend mere functionality and become true objects of desire.
Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Ruhlmann's legacy.
Mm-hmm.
What should we be taking away from his story as we move into this final part of our discussion? As we've been talking about Ruhlmann and his impact on Art Deco, I can't help but think about how relevant his work still feels. Today, design trends, they kind of come and go.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something about Ruhlmann's style that really transcends time.
It's interesting, how design moves in these cycles. Just like Ruhlmann witnessed that shift from Art Nouveau to Art Deco and then into modernism.
Right.
We see these new styles kind of emerging and evolving all the time.
It makes you wonder what Ruhlmann would think of today's design landscape.
Right.
Would he embrace minimalism, or would he think it was too stark?
Yeah. Would he be intrigued by, new materials and technologies, or would he always favor those traditional techniques?
It's tough to say.
It's fun to speculate, but I think his core principles, the focus on quality, that dedication to craftsmanship, that unwavering commitment to this refined aesthetic, I mean, those are timeless.
Yeah, you're right. Good design is good design no matter what the era is.
Exactly.
But getting back to Ruhlmann's legacy, how would you sum up his impact on the world of furniture design and interior decoration?
I think Ruhlmann's meticulous attention to detail, his really innovative use of materials, and the sheer elegance of his designs, I mean, it really cemented his place as a true master of Art Deco.
Yeah.
He really helped define this entire era of design.
Yeah.
And his influence can still be seen today, not just in furniture, but in fashion architecture, even graphic design.
It's amazing to think about how one person's vision can have such a lasting impact. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Émile-Jacques Ruhlmann, what are some key takeaways that we should carry with us? What can we learn from his story, his process, his dedication to his craft?
Well, for me, Ruhlmann really embodies this idea that design is more than just creating functional objects. It's about creating experiences, evoking emotions, crafting pieces that transcend the everyday and become something really, truly special. And he reminds us that attention to detail really matters, that quality craftsmanship is never out of style, and that a commitment to beauty and elegance can have a lasting impact.
It's a powerful reminder for anyone who appreciates design, whether you're a seasoned professional or, just starting to explore the world of creativity.
Absolutely. And I think Ruhlmann's work has a lot to offer aspiring designers, in particular.
Yeah.
He encourages us to think boldly, to experiment with materials, to never compromise on quality, and to always strive for that perfect balance between form and function.
He was a true visionary, and his work continues to inspire and captivate us to this day. So there you have it, a deep dive into the world of Émile-Jacques Ruhlmann. We explored his life, his work, his legacy, and hopefully you came away with a deeper appreciation for this Art Deco master and how his principles can still resonate with us today.
And who knows, maybe this deep dive will spark a passion for Art Deco and, a whole new generation of designers.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and keep diving deep.